Welcome to Living Outside the Box, a podcast associated with Outside the Box Consulting. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Bowman, and I'm so glad to have you continuing on this journey with me into learning what it means to lead and to live outside the box. And if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Welcome to this journey. I encourage you to go back into the archives and listen to some of the podcasts that we've already posted, some of the episodes that we've already had interviews with leaders from around the world, and learn more about how you might be an outside the box leader. Today, I want to focus on something that leaders often overlook, and that is the essence of the leader's presence. The fact that a leader must be present with their followers. We talk about transformational leadership and the four elements of transformational leadership. Every one of the four elements, inspirational motivation or inspiring people, idealized influence, building trust between the leader and the follower, individualized consideration, understanding the joys, the challenges, the gifts of each person, and being able to harness those things so that transformation happens, and intellectual stimulation, which is allowing that person to think more deeply, to innovate. Those all require presence. A leader cannot engage in those practices from a distance. A leader must be in the midst of his or her followers in order to be a transformational force in their lives. We see in society, we see in the church and in secular organizations where there are leaders who are elevated to the top, CEOs and other type leaders that become further and further away from the people that they are leading because of responsibilities, because of expectations, because of whatever it might be. There's this distance that grows because of the level that they've risen to in their leadership. However, there are leaders who still rise to those levels, and yet they maintain connection with their followers. Those leaders, and it is fewer than the other types of leaders where they lose that connection, but it's those leaders that are able to maintain the connection and yet have the authority and responsibility that comes with being that C-suite or upper echelon of type leader, that are transformational leaders because they know their people. They make space for their people. They get to know their people. I know of a leader of an organization, and I can't speak in detail because of where the organization is located in our world and things that are happening in our world. But this leader was at one point in their career in the trenches, working with the individuals right alongside them, shoulder to shoulder, knew everyone. And because of their leadership potential, this individual was allowed to move up into a leadership role that eventually has landed this person at the top of leadership in this organization. However, that individual has maintained relationships with the people that are now this person's followers. People that this person worked with day in and day out, like I said, shoulder to shoulder, right there in the midst of everything that was going on in the organization. This is a benefit to this person because this person now knows the people that they are leading and yet has the authority and responsibility to guide the entire organization, but they do it from a place of relationship, a place of presence. Presence among your people is so important as a leader. Leaders that are gone all the time, in meetings all the time, in travels here and there, and they're never really present, or leaders that create distance because they want their influence to be at some sort of C-suite level, leadership team level, rather than knowing the people that are the backbone, the foundation of the organization. That kind of distance, that kind of absence of presence can cause a struggle and an inability for transformational leadership to take place. I recently spoke at two different leadership events in the United States here. And the interesting thing about these events is we allow, in the events that I was part of and in the organization that they are part of, there is an allowance for people who can't physically be in the room as a facilitator of the event to join by Zoom. And that is wonderful. And yet, someone remarked in the first event I spoke at that they so valued the fact that I was willing to get on a plane and actually physically be present with them as they learned about leadership, as they heard my story, as they were interacting with one another and with all the other in-person facilitators. Joining by Zoom, let me be very clear, for the facilitators of this particular conference, is an absolutely okay, acceptable, and understandable way to approach things. I am not in any way diminishing that. Zoom has been a useful tool when it is employed well. But it is that presence that I wanted to point out to you, my listeners, that presence that someone noticed, that someone took time, that I took time, that I made the effort to be in the presence of this group of people as they walked through this very important, life transforming leadership development. Presence is so important. There was a study that I read, this was decades ago, about the importance of parental presence. And having worked in Central Europe, there are many orphanages in what we would call former Eastern European countries, those countries that were occupied and governed by the former USSR. I also know individuals who were orphans in those countries, and this study does apply. But there were studies that were done about the absence of being held by a parent or an adult if you were in an orphanage. A lot of the children in those orphanages were left alone, untouched, unconnected, unrelated to. And it has impacted their development mentally, emotionally, and even physically. They had studies that showed that there were stunted growth in individuals. Of course, there was emotional damage that was done, psychological trauma. We were made to relate to one another. We need presence. If we didn't learn that after the years of COVID lockdowns and regulations about distancing and how many people could be in your presence, then perhaps if we haven't learned that, we need to take a look again. We need to revisit those moments that we remember. Oh my word, it was so important that I had people in my life. Presence. I can't say it enough. It is important to be present. But let me take this one step further, because at one of these leadership conferences that I was at most recently, there was also the idea of like being present in the room. That is, that you need to be aware of and connected with and engaging with the men and women around you in life. So there's actual locational presence, like a leader that needs to be connected to and in the immediate presence of their followers. But we also need to be present where we are. If I was doing this podcast and at the same time had my phone and was answering emails and trying to talk to you, that would not be an effective way for us to be present on this podcast together. If I was in a business meeting and answering email and trying to listen to someone present something, my posture of being on email, on my cell phone, or on my laptop would not communicate that I was present of mind in that room. And this discussion, like I said, came up in one of these leadership conferences that I just spoke at, how people were desiring to grow as leaders and to desire to be present with their people, and at the same time leaving the room quite often, quite frequently, to answer phone calls or to make phone calls because of an email that was received. Our culture has become one of urgent, important, immediate needs. And everything seems like a fire that we have to put out. Everything, everyone, every text seems like it must be dealt with now. I am guilty at times of doing that very thing. I am a work in progress, and that's what being a transformational leader is. It's recognizing that there are things that need to be transformed, to be changed, in order for them to be effective, in order for me to be effective as a leader. So my challenge for us as outside the box leaders is the challenge of being present. Not only present in mind, setting aside the cell phone and being with your family, taking time to listen to the other person sitting across the desk from you, listening to your leaders under you that are leading leaders, that are making those connections, but taking the initiative to physically be present with those you're leading. Yes, there are going to be times you have to go to meetings, whether it's board meetings or other types of meetings. You have to travel and go to different areas of your organization. That's understandable. But take time. Take time to be present with the men and women that are being led by you. And if you're an emerging leader, build that practice into your life now. Learn to be present in a room, in mind, and to be present with people as you engage them as a leader. I think of two individuals that come to mind. The first person that I think of that is an amazing example of being present, of being there for their leaders, is a man that I am pleased to call my bishop, Bishop Livingston. When he is with us in our denominational meetings, he is with us. He sits with us and talks with us. Last year, he sat down with all the laity in a meeting at our annual conference and had lunch with us, moved from table to table, and was present with us. I am sure there were other things that were pressing him in that moment, emails, other responsibilities that he had, but he took the time. I don't recall ever seeing him use his cell phone. And he spent that time connecting. He was with us. The other example that I think of that is just it's a more personal one is that is the example of my grandfather. Even though he had lots to do as a doctor, whether it was his work delivering children or stitching up people in his private practice or doing the everyday work of a doctor, he always made time for family. Now, this is back in the day when there were no cell phones and there were emergencies that he had to go to, but he always made time for us. It's important if we are going to be outside the box leaders, if we're going to be transformational leaders who are ourselves transformed, we must be present. So today I encourage you, find ways to be present with those around you, those you are leading, your family, your friends, your community. Find ways to be present, because in being present, both physically and mentally, you will become an outside the box leader. Thanks so much for listening today. I look forward to journeying more with you. Check out our podcast on Spotify and now on YouTube. Click the links there. Hit the subscribe buttons. Stay up to date with all that's coming out of Outside the Box Consulting. And this is a huge announcement that I've saved to the very end. I have published my first book. You can find it on outsidetheboxconsulting.org or go to Amazon and search the title, God Can Use You. This is a story, this is my story of what God did to help me live and lead beyond the limits that this world placed on me. And I hope that it inspires each one of you as you learn to live beyond limits, as you learn to be an outside the box leader. So go check out God Can Use You, available through Amazon. It's also linked on our website, outsidetheboxconsulting.org. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, know that I'm here for you and you can be someone who leads and lives outside the box.